Hello there, Hero Club. I'm Wheelchair 21, and as you already know, this is probably an interview because I'm on camera talking about Hero Club stuff with actual people you either know of, don't know of yet, or just can't recognize the face to the voice. And this time we're going to be looking at two of the main people behind the Naro TV services, which are in association with our friend Yagi-san, which we promoted recently on the site, and are helping him produce the project called Ikari and whatnot. And he's doing a course for their service, which we'll be discussing what it is and what it's all about. And with me today is Jordan Smith and Todd Silverstein. Thank you for joining me today. There is a bit of a lag, so you'll see like there'll be times where they're probably going to be on pause or there'll be a bit of a little clutter, and we'll try to edit it all out for everyone at home, so you won't see all the chaos. But we're going to try to do as much questions as we can since they have a limited time span with us. And I guess to begin, since our audience probably doesn't know you guys very well, could you tell us how you guys got into the entertainment industry or just, media industry in general? And feel free to include any prior projects you were associated with before Naro, or at least before its creation.
Jordan, do you want me to go first? I guess so. Hi, I'm Todd Silverstein. So I'm partially in the media industry because about half of my career, I also worked in technology startups, though typically ones that had a media background. But just talking about my media career, before relocating to Japan, I was in Los Angeles. I was a consulting producer on the HBO dramedy Silicon Valley seasons 4 to 6. Prior to that, I worked for a number of years as a book editor with HarperCollins in New York City, and also as a freelance journalist. So I've sort of worked in different media on the media half of my career.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Let's see. So I actually started in the entertainment world as a very particular, maybe even unusual modern form of entertainment known as the professor. And I stood in front of a lot of classrooms and cracked a few jokes and tried to keep education lively for thousands of students at first universities in the US, UCLA, Cal State Long Beach, UC Riverside, Pepperdine, Roger Williams, and then moved out to Japan about 8 years ago and was a professor there. But I taught a lot of Japanese studies courses, and I worked with a lot of people in pop culture, in anime, in the film industry. I often worked as an interpreter and like a volunteer at Anime Expo for a few years as a panel interpreter. So I met a bunch of people, in the entertainment world, and I'd always been interested in it. The last few years, I've been working simultaneously as a professor and working in the branding, advertising, and marketing world, sometimes involving production, but also creating audio documentaries for BBC Radio. And I co-produced and wrote and hosted 4 of those before joining Naro. But this is the first time that I had this opportunity to do anything of this scale or this depth, kind of combining entertainment with my education side. And this year I quit the professor life and went full steam with the Naro team.
All right, thank you for that intro. I know there's a little bit of basis of that on your website, but most people probably are like, what's going on? I just learned of this the other day from our site and whatnot. So I thought it was best for you guys to abridge your careers rather than me just going read their site. And moving on to the service of Naro TV, how do you best describe this service or explain it to those completely unaware of it? Like the platform itself, just
Yeah, sure. So I guess at a high level, what Naro is trying to do is take you essentially on a memorable video journey, like into Japanese culture. And you do that alongside extraordinary individuals. We call them, masters, who are the best they are at what they do. So for example, if you want to experience the world of sumo, you get to do that alongside a former champion. If you want to learn to cook tempura, you can up your tempura magic with like a Michelin-starred tempura chef. For something like anime, you can watch anime come to life in the hands of a visionary director, in our case, Mamoru Oshii of Ghost in the Shell fame. And these are delivered in the form of sort of long form, high quality video courses. We've really tried to bring high production values effects and all of the rest to it. And the idea is that you can sort of experience from just right from your desktop or mobile device the pleasures of learning and travel and self-discovery, and really have these vivid and up close and personal encounters with some of the most interesting people that we've had the privilege and pleasure to come across, drawn from Japanese culture.
All right. Now, besides it being obviously Japanese culture based and inspired and working with these professions that are mostly associated with its culture, obviously, what makes a service though different from similar platforms like, say, a Skillshare or a Masterclass as seen here in North America?
Sure. Jordan may have some thoughts on this. But I would say a number of things. First, we are working in sort of a different part of the world, and in many cases, like a different language is our starting point. So one of the reasons I think it's been so great to be able to team up with Jordan on this is, then you get into how do you actually build translations or subtitles for this, because it's an active communication sort of across language. So that's something we spend a lot of time and a lot of effort sort of building a system around. Beyond that, I guess we believe we just have a very unique take on how we're going to bring you into these cultures and sort of share them. And I think that's driven by like two principles. The first is, very few people are like, I want to become a sumo wrestler, for example. And so what we want to do is say, how can we help you see sumo through almost like a professional or experienced eyes? And our dream is that like, oh, cool, now you actually see the world in a new way. And that's sort of a unique gift that someone who's really good at what they do has, and is something that we work very hard to translate and embody, in our courses. Beyond that, of course, we want to teach you some things. So, at the same time, we work very, very carefully, and this is again where Jordan's background as a professor is super helpful, to say, how do we take what's in, someone who's extremely talented and has been practicing for years? How do we take some of the things that are out of their head and structure it in a way that someone who's maybe new to the subject can really very quickly kind of feel like they understand what's going on or follow that action? And then the final thing is I think this is just like meeting interesting people. These are such amazingly accomplished, but always so interesting to interact with people. And we want to give you the experience of like, hey, okay, I may not have an opportunity to actually like sit down with this person, but to feel like you are sitting right across from them, to really get them a little bit more unguarded and a little bit more unpolished, so you can sort of get a sense of like who these people are as people. And while there are probably overlapping elements that some of the other people that you mentioned offer, we sort of think that our approach to sort of building this and structuring the courses is actually quite unique.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. For me, it's a kind of education that's also an experience. And I think from years of teaching in a lot of different fields, a lot of different departments, a lot of different universities, I always felt like it's not just about the information that you're imparting. If you just list up a bunch of data and hand it to someone and say, memorize this, that's, you can get data across to people. You can get information across to people in that way. It's only going to stick, and it's only going to mean something if it's part of a narrative, if it's part of a journey, if there's a poetry and a power to it. And Todd and I, met through poetry, through a shared interest in Japanese poetry. We both edited Tokyo Poetry Journal together. And I think that's also a part of it too, is when we work with people, we're encouraging them to be their most poetic, to be at their peak of storytelling. And and we don't give them the story to tell, we don't give them the poetry, we just encourage them to be really free. We encourage them to use their hands, we encourage them to laugh and have fun. And I think that's also part of it too. So the formula is, there does have to be some kind of actual information, a core of something that's taught, but then there also has to be something powerful for delivering that, and something that makes it compelling, and something that really sticks in your mind and in your soul.
All right. Thanks for that information. Because just learning about this, it's been a whole experience, and it's right, just leading up to this interview. So it's great to just pick your brain on what goes on and how is it different and what's it going to do. For example, like our next question is, like what was the catalyst, like the inception to create this platform that you obviously you have out there now for people to learn about the culture of Japan and learn about these specialized professions?
Well, for me, I had moved to Japan for a job actually with a tech startup, and this was right before COVID, and then COVID happened, and we were all on lockdown. And I think, like many other people, I was watching a lot of TV and trying to teach myself things. But separately and in parallel with that, I had been introduced to some people, in Japan who were interested in working on something. And one of the common themes, and one of our co-founders is not with us today, like Mariko Nishimura, was hugely passionate about Japanese culture and wanted to sort of like spread it to me as an individual, but then was like super passionate about wanting to spread it to more people. And I had become really intrigued by like online learning as a general category, because I feel like we're still in the early days. Like, people have taken courses and then filmed it and put it online and been like, that's online learning. And I'm kind of intrigued by like, how can you actually make that experience more immersive and better? And of course, having worked a little bit in Hollywood, they have a view on like, how do you make things dramatic and immersive? And so it really kind of came out of this conversation between myself and, like many other members of the team, especially the Japanese members of the team. And we sort of like coalesced around this idea of like, oh, wow, like what about these incredible people? Jordan had met some of them individually. I had met some of them and felt like my world had been changed by those encounters. And it was like, oh, like maybe we could find a format to teach or share or make these encounters accessible to anyone around the world. And I think that was the idea that the whole team sort of coalesced around and got us all excited about. And we're like, hey, we can do this and we can build this. So
good. From my perspective, I mean, this is doing something like this is a dream come true. So when Todd called me and presented the idea, and I was just like, absolutely. And there are two things that I immediately thought of. Is just like, oh, all these amazing people that I've met, throughout the years of living in Japan. I've been in Japan, I think 9-10 years total, spread out over 20 years. So I'm just like, oh, I would love to reach out to these people and hopefully give them a venue, to do whatever they want with, essentially, but go deep into what they do best. And then I thought about all the great writers and creators and people in in the video world as well, video production world, that I've always wanted to collaborate with, or I have collaborated with here and there, and just thought about what a great opportunity it would be to find some synergy. So not a whole lot to add, just a lot of excitement at being included in this.
All right, thanks for that. In regards to obviously making your platform and doing all this stuff for the courses, you call all these professional, legendary people in their professions masters, obviously, and then in most cases, yes, that is the perfect name because of their rank, their accolades, all that stuff. So I agree wholeheartedly. But in the case of actually gathering them to be featured for the courses, as you mentioned, some of these people are former associates and acquaintances. So what was like the criteria necessary, and how did it all go about contacting them? Like, were they actually your first choices, or was it just that they were the most accessible to you? Like, how do you guys decide who are the masters, and how do you, I guess, go through about getting them for your courses?
Yeah, I don't think there's one simple answer to that. I mean, we try to sort of balance in this deliberation and then a little bit of serendipity as well. What I guess where we sort of have two key criteria that we begin with, and so looking across the culture, we're looking for people who are recognized, especially by their peers, as being like one of the best or is doing something really interesting. And then the second thing is that it's really important to us that they, want to share their message, but also sort of have a unique take on things. And almost inevitably they do. But I think the first thing is like we want to find people who are just extraordinary, not just in what they do, but also in how they talk about it. Beyond that criteria, then it's like a whole mix of different factors. And since we are a for-profit business, we look at various areas to say like, okay, how much interest and attention is there, in these areas. We have some of our own kind of special sauce for sort of how we evaluate like the recognition and the name recognition of some of these people. And then we have various channels through which that we can reach out to people. And again, in some cases, we've had personal connections. In other cases, we've actually approached people cold and really had to make a case to say, hey, why would you want to go ahead and make a course with us? So I don't think there's a simple answer to that, but that's the general gist of it. But mostly we really focus on like whose stories do we want to tell? Who are we excited about showcasing, and who do we also believe is equally as excited to sort of share and have a unique take on the world with others. So
yeah, absolutely. I would say that there are some things that we don't do, and that's we don't, for example, count how many Instagram followers they have, and if they don't have 1 million, they're not getting in, or have they won an Academy Award or whatever. We don't do that. It's very much like it's about heart and gut, and that like someone on our team, whether it's Mariko, Yuki, Todd, me, we're typically the ones that that introduce teachers, either that or they're friends of friends, and there has to be a sort of dude factor. Like when you say the name, you're like, dude, seriously? That person, you can get in touch with that person. I would love to make a class with them. It's sheer excitement. And it's a very democratic form of excitement, in the sense that there will be times when one of us will suggest a name and some of us are just like, who's that? But then they'll be like, okay, check out these links, and we'll see some photos of stuff they've done, or we'll connect the name with like a favorite film or piece of art that that we know, or something like that, and then the excitement kicks in. But we're kind of teaching each other all these new things to be excited about, and these amazing people who make those topics exciting. And so once we feel that, we feel like okay, there's something that we want to share with the world.
That's completely understandable, because I assume that not everyone there had to be obviously a friend of a friend, and there had to be some obvious work into negotiating or convincing people to be like, hey, do you want to do this? And then them going yes and no, because recently, having interviewed a stunt actor in Japan, they told me that like sometimes you go up to these people who are obviously of a older class or a better experience, and sometimes they don't actually want to share their secrets to the next generation because they think it's like, you're going to take my spot, rather than, oh, this person just wants to learn so they can be in my spot years later. They think that they're coming for the spot now versus waiting their time and paying their dues, obviously. So I sort of get that. I know that there's like a difference in how the culture works there from time to time, whether it's, are you taking my spot, or, oh, you're really good, I've heard of you. And so then it leads to one thing to another. Then, speaking of the masters, as they're featured, what is it like to work with them? I'm guessing not every course you guys get hands-on interactions with them, but for the ones that you've had, what is it like working with them, and what is something you were able to learn directly from them that you're able to like implicate into your own lives that obviously aren't a part of the course you're attempting to teach the viewer, per se? Like, what is stuff that you've been able to take from this?
Why don't I take this one? Cool. Yeah, I mean, both actually, I mean, both Todd and I mean, and Mariko in particular, because she's also involved in kind of teacher relations. The three of us always have very, very direct contact with the teachers. We sit down with them for hours, sometimes dozens of hours. In the case of Yagi Sensei, like hundreds of hours. And we just spend tons and tons of time with them, getting to know them as people, getting to know their careers, getting to know their philosophy, getting to know how they do what they do, reading their books if they have books, watching their films if they've done film, just everything, really, really getting deep in their world. And so it's super exciting, and it's super different every time. Oftentimes it's the sort of gatekeeping or the difficulty in getting access to some of the teachers that we get access to. It's not even about the teachers themselves. They're actually really cool, very accessible, super down to earth. But because a lot of them are really well known and extremely busy, I mean, some of them with schedules that are booked out years in advance, there's a whole gatekeeping community around them, managers and agents and lawyers and stuff like that. So those are the people that we have to make sure are happy, and then they'll kind of allow us, you know, the access to the teacher that's unfettered and direct. And the experience of working with them is absolutely amazing. We all learn something very different. And what's super exciting, and we haven't released a lot of this yet, but we have a lot of behind the scenes footage, and footage that we just take on our cell phones or other cameras on the days that we're shooting. And the cool thing about the shoots is that there's always some kind of magic that happens, you know, because we've got what we call a shooting script, you know, and we're prepared, and we have things we want to talk about, things that they want to talk about. We have a game plan, but there's always something that just sparks, and they always go on a tangent, and something new is always revealed. And what is so cool about it is sometimes we'll be done shooting, you know, sometimes 2 full days, 3 full days, you know, of shooting. We'll be at the end of it, and like the production team will just be sitting around with the teacher amidst all the cameras and the lights and the equipment and stuff like that, still talking about stuff. And we'll be kind of starting to pack up and close things away, but the conversation is ongoing because everyone who's there, you know, on set has just become so much more excited. And a lot of the people who are on set, who are not involved in the writing team like Todd and I are, you know, they're seeing this for the first time. So they knew they were going to go and that they were going to shoot a course with so-and-so, and maybe they glanced at the script or something like that, but there's always something new it's uncovered. And so they're often learning something. And I almost feel like you can gauge the success of what it is that we're creating by the fact that these people who literally just spent, you know, 30 some hours listening to this person talk and talk and talk, if they're still interested, then I'm sure we can produce something cool. And as to specifically what we learned from each teacher, I think it's different every time. But I will say one thing about Yagi Sensei, partly because, you know, he's close to your heart, and you guys did that great interview with him a few weeks back. We learned from Yagi Sensei, I think, the heart of creative enthusiasm and what it means to just burn passionately to create. He went so above and beyond, and he excited all of us in our imaginations, you know, so that we all pushed the boundaries of, you know, of time, and the commitment level. What, you know, definitely went way beyond minor sleep deprivation into just like obsession. And we had so much fun, you know, creating what we created. We're now in the post-production phase, but I think, like, you know, him being the kind of person who would just call up in the middle of the day, like, hey, what are you doing this afternoon? And I'm like, oh, I'm working. What are you doing? He's like, well, I thought we could get together and like do an editing session. And then, like, you know, we meet up, and then, you know, 8 hours later, we're still just jamming on it, you know. Or he'll do like straight up overnighters, you know, like all night kind of sessions, and just gets into that mode. So that's just one example of what you see from Yagi. But, you know, also the creative problem solving spirit of like, there's not really an answer. There's not necessarily a cookie cutter, you know, pattern or instruction book here. How are we going to solve this problem? And just watching him take the time to think it through with a team is beautiful. Every class, there's some unique thing like that.
Yeah, maybe just to add a couple of quick things. I think Jordan covered it, but one thing that just continually impresses me is you realize that these people are so good because they think so carefully around whatever it is that they do. I'm continually surprised at how deep and layered, like, their explanations for what they're doing or how they're doing it are. Every time that blows us away. Like, a small detail that I love is, you know, like, Nitome was looking, our tempura chef was looking at like what hand does the diner pick up, you know, the chopsticks with first. And he's actually like plating the shrimp with the tail facing towards the chopsticks. And it's like that wondrous attention to detail where like everything is so carefully thought out and considered. But, you know, the other thing is I have such vivid memories of like it's incredible how physical even these things that you think are like purely intellectual are. So again, the Yagi set, I mean, I learned I never want to be like a creature actor, because you're inside a hot sweaty suit wearing your like undershirt and dripping sweat, and you know, the rubber smells and everything else, or we're moving buildings around on set, and you just realize how physical this process is, that behind the movie making magic, and we've seen that behind the cooking, there's like sweat and blood and tears, and like there's just a physicality to all of this stuff, even when we're spending all this time on the writing and the intellectual piece of it. When it actually comes together and you see these people working, it's always this like intense physical process, and that's made a huge impression on me with each and every class. There's been a different aspect to that physicality, and you can almost see how it's shaped like each of the teachers, how they walk, how they move, like the burns on Nitome's like arms from the oil spatter or whatever they'd be. Like these traits mark, these like professions mark you, and it's really kind of fascinating and a little bit terrifying to see the marks that they leave on that body. So
All right. Yeah, no,
And
thank you very much for that.
can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
Sorry, I don't mean to nerd out, but like, Todd was mentioning that it's very physical, right? And I come from like the last, 15 years of my life have been in the academic world, right? So, yeah, I teach difficult things, right? Culture, high art, literature, things like that, difficult poetry. And then when Todd was like, I think I think we should do this class on tempura. And I was just, I was like, tempura? What's the class going to be about? It's like, first you take the vegetable and then you put it in the batter and then you put it in the oil. And then you take a different thing and you put it in the batter and I was like, seriously, what are we, how is this going to be interesting? How are we going to make like a 2-hour class on this? And Todd's like, I went to meet him. I ate the food. The conversation with him is absolutely mind blowing. And I was like, okay, we'll see. And once I got in there, it was like, I think that was the first shoot where people actually cried on set at just listening to the way that he like talked about the hundreds of scars in his arms and what they mean and how he got them. And, a guy who you can ask him to talk about asparagus, and then 45 minutes later, he's still talking about asparagus. And you're like, this is the most fascinating thing I've ever heard about asparagus. So while Todd is emphasizing that it's physical, and it is, it's also extremely intellectual and smart. And I did not know that about a lot of these things, even though I love to cook myself, so there are tons of surprises on all sides.
No, the stuff that you bring up just makes me think of stuff I've sort of been through or doing as myself as a site runner for you guys. You don't know, I'm actually, like I said, the editor-in-chief, but I'm also one of the 4 original founders of the site. There's now 5 of us collectively that own the site and work together, but I'm one of the spearheads behind it, and I'm like the guys who they're like, you're the de facto leader, so I have to make some of the decisions. And I just remember, I actually don't speak Japanese. I barely can read it, but I'm a huge Tokusatsu enthusiast because I've seen dubs, I've seen subs and whatnot, and it's the art that I like. And my friends are usually the guys doing all of the translatings between me and Yagi. But then Yagi also can at least write English. He can't, I guess, speak it. And so he can talk to me, and I'll talk to him. And I didn't know that originally, but we had a mishap where Google Translate in Japan is automatically turned on, and it took our interview and converted it horribly. And Yagi was like, "What's going on?" And I had to sit there and notice that the characters were wrong, even though I don't speak and read Japanese. I was like sitting there with him because my translators were out. It was like near the holidays; they were gone, and I was like, "Yagi-san, this is not us. There's a technical issue." And he's like, "Oh, it's Google Translate. My apologies." But like just being there, I sat with him for like 2 whole hours trying to figure out why it was wrong. And he sat there with me patiently, and I felt so calm, even though I had like the weight of the world going, oh crap, I just burnt all my bridges with all of Japan Tokusatsu creators, probably because they're probably thinking I'm defaming them or changing what they said or wrote, and let alone it was just Google Translate telling Japanese people that we were bad journalists, technically changing people's answers. And I was like, but Yagi was able to smooth it over with like his co-stars that I guess were defamed. I was like, oh my god. I was just sitting there like, this is not good. And I understand, like you say, all the whole litigation or all the issues with the agents, the managers, because I'm still dealing with that with co-stars of his or staff from his shows. And the first thing was just reaching out to you guys. Half of my staff was like, "Are you sure this is a good idea?" And I'm like, "Yes, this is a good idea. I like it. It's gonna be great." I like this. This interview for me is kind of just a me thing because I'm just more interested in like what is Naro and you getting to work with all these guys. Even if I myself am not a chef or I'm not entirely into sumo, I just like the concept of what you guys are doing and who you're able to bring together to deliver this course, because I myself was obviously a bookworm. My backup plan was technically teaching too. I don't know what I wanted to teach. People said English. I wanted to do history. It's all up in the air, man. It's for another day. But I really appreciate hearing all this information from you guys. So, in regards to the interview, you gave us other material to at least know about the other courses that you're doing. And ironically enough, Tempura, like you bring up, is one of the ones that you showed us some stuff behind the scenes of with interviews with either yourself or other members. And we noticed that you guys are doing also other types of cooking like ramen and makanai. I hope I pronounced that right. I apologize if I slaughtered it. So when you're filming a lot of the food courses, like what do you find to be the hardest part about capturing not just, I would say, tempura, but maybe ramen? Like what are the hardest parts about featuring the cuisine and capturing it all on camera, getting the right angles and whatnot? Like, do you guys have trouble with that, or do you just go, no, we know it because we've done Hollywood and stuff like that, you know?
Well, I would say the ramen one in particular, the big challenge was just the sheer volume of stuff to capture. I mean, it is such an involved process, and the course itself ended up yielding over 4 hours of videos. That's a tightly edited 4 hours. It could have been 10 hours, and I think people will. It's so dense and so packed. You'd probably have to watch it a couple times, and we're just about finished with the cookbook that goes with it, and it's over 50 pages in Microsoft Word, like not even like graphic designed. And so I would say that was the biggest challenge. But the other one is, there are two ways to approach a cooking show. One is to show the chef in their natural environment. The other one is to set up a test kitchen or a studio kitchen and have them kind of cooking there. And there are advantages to both. In the case of Chef Shono for the ramen class, we thought it would be really cool to go into his restaurant, partly because it's beautiful, and it's set up so it's got a whole noodle making station, huge pots that he wanted to cook in, and then a very cool kind of horseshoe shaped bar, which is very ramen restaurant-esque. So it was kind of perfect in that sense. But it also presented a lot of challenges because the space was not designed to be a studio. It was designed to actually cook and produce things. So we had a lot of, kind of camera angle questions, and are we going to be able to, to get down over the counter to see things, and how can we get good bird's eye view shots and stuff. So it was a jigsaw puzzle that was, I think 2 full days of cooking, probably about 10 hours each in the kitchen. And every shot, had to be captured within that time. And we had Shono and his 2 assistants kind of running around station to station, like, okay, put this in this pot, get this on, now put this in the oven and come over here, and then come back here and start this pot going and put the chashu and hang it. So you've got all these things happening at once. And then when you edit that later, you've got to piece them all out and remember all the things that happened over here were for this particular kind of soup. All the things happening over here and here were for that soup. So it was a big jigsaw puzzle, but a lot of fun at the same time. A lot of that energy, I think, comes through. Todd, what would you say from your experience? I mean, your experience in Hollywood is different from food shooting, but
yeah, no, I mean, I still think one thing I learned from my Hollywood experience is work with great partners, and we have some incredible partners. So when it comes to things like lighting and camera work, it's just a relief to be able to sort of rely on their years of experience. And we spent a long time sort of vetting the people that we wanted to partner with, with that in mind. But yeah, as Jordan mentioned, I think a lot of for us are the challenges, or we have to be especially efficient with our time. And of course, they try to do that in Hollywood too, but we don't have big crews or everything else. So Jordan mentioned the jigsaw puzzle of having to figure out the order and how we're going to shoot just to sort of use that time super efficiently. And then I guess I would say is every space represents a challenge. There's always some lighting issue that you have to wait around and solve for. Something always breaks. You've always got to solve that. And the bane of my existence continues to be, but it was the case in Hollywood too, especially when we were on location, is ambient background noise, where you have to interrupt the shooting because there's a plane flying overhead or a noisy truck driving by or someone coughing next door. But I guess I feel in that sense it's not unique to what we're doing. We just have less room for error, given that we are a small startup and working kind of more on a shoestring in certain cases. So,
do you guys believe that the sumo course would be a solid primer for what is to be expected, not just in sumo culture, but how sumo stables work and how training for sumo is? Do you believe this is one of the best primers for the sport itself?
Todd, that's got to be you.
yeah, I mean, I guess just to try and maybe pick that question apart, I think first and foremost, it's Konishiki, right? Like it's not just a sumo, and our classes aren't just like, oh, this is sumo, we're teaching you about sumo. It's called Sumo by Konishiki for a reason. So I think we did justice. He told us so much about his own training, and he was a foreigner who came in not speaking the language and what that experience was like. And I'm particularly proud of like how we realized that. But he was training at a time and place, and and talks quite a bit about the sumo tradition actually being quite resistant and slow to change, but that doesn't mean it doesn't change at all. So, I think it is a portrait and snapshot and very much true to his experiences. But I guess I would be somewhat more hesitant to be like, oh, that's always what the experience is like, or that's how it would be for everyone. And I think even Konishiki at one point said that different people in his stable had different experiences, just depending on where they were coming from, how they found their way into the sport, what was going on sort of more broadly, et cetera. That said, like there was so much that he was talking about, and I had been previously once. I'd had the pleasure of like actually watching sumo. This really, for me, like in the experience of building the course with him, took us like behind the scenes, and I actually found that stuff almost more interesting than some of the things and the ritual that actually take place in the matches, like how hard these guys work and how much, in fact, like this dominates their life. And Konishiki talks about sort of living sumo 24/7, and that for me was a really eye-opening part of the experience, how much he wanted to talk about the training and the stuff that happens outside the ring, outside the matches, and in fact how grueling it is in 365 days a year, and those aspects of the course for me were the most interesting to hear about.
In regards to upcoming courses, you're getting to work with Mamoru Oshii of obviously Ghost in the Shell, Pat Labor. Yeah, I actually watched like Pat Labor like all last summer, ironically, because I had seen some of it as a kid, and I'd rewatched it with my friend Kaus, who was one of my other co-founders who did the sumo stuff. And when he saw that we had Oishi, he was like, "Dude, that's legit amazing." Or I should say, not we, but you guys had it, so we had to like pick your brain working with him, as well as you have the project coming up with Yagi-san. So what is it like to work with these two directors in anime and tokusatsu, since they are seen as two of the media exports for Japan? Because you have obviously Power Rangers, Godzilla, bringing over that stuff. You have Ultraman and whatnot. And then you have obviously Ghost in the Shell, which is one of the most successful animes I think he's done, as well as one of the most successful animes and manga series made in the last 25-30 years, I believe. I could be wrong with the numbers there. I could be fudging it a little.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked a bit about working with Yagi, and we adore Yagi, and we're so excited to to work with him. And we learned a lot in the process too, because a lot of people like, I'm in my 40s. I'll let Todd speak for himself. But I'm of a generation that we didn't have Ultraman in the US growing up. There were like issues with international rights and stuff. So I learned more about Ultraman as an adult. you know? So it's a different kind of view coming into it, like watching Ultraman for the first time in your 20s, and you're like, oh, this is pretty cool, you know? But it's different from like when you're 7 and you're looking at these things and they're forming your value system, and they, you know, they become your heroes or whatever. But I was still excited. Working with Oshii Mamoru was different because, you know, I long ago watched Ghost in the Shell, Innocence, a few of Skycrawlers, you know, a few of his other ones, and some of the newer stuff too. And you know, I loved it, and I was super excited. And he's also he's one of those people who he's so well established in his career, and he's a bit older now. I think he's in his 70s, and you know, there's a lot of layers of protection around him in the sense of, you know, a lot of people want a piece of his time, and he's very much more private, I would say. Right? He's not really on social media. He doesn't really do a lot of interviews. I could only find maybe a couple videos of him even, you know, speaking extensively, and he's giving very short answers. It's on stage at the Tokyo International Film Festival, and it's interesting, but you know, and then he has to be translated. So the amount of time that he's actually talking is, you know, is like 1/3 of the total time. And so I was super excited to find out what happens when you sit down with him and just, you know, let him go and go and go. And he, like, his lectures are almost like the Oshii Mamoru film school. I mean, he gives like introduction to film theory, how to make films and anime. I mean, it's really literally like you're taking a film school course with him, and he's walking you through. Some of it's more interviewee and getting into his background. Others is like, how did he create? How does one create? What does it mean to make anime and other pieces? And it's super exciting. There's a ton to learn. And you know, I think for me, I realized in doing that we almost have a sacred opportunity, and we don't want to mess it up. So you know, we're working very, very carefully on the subtitles, making sure that it's going to all come across clearly and really represent the intellectual core of what he has to say. The first time we met him, we went to the production IG office, and the person who had introduced us to him was there, and you know, a few other members of his team are there, and they're old buddies. The guy that introduced us to Oshii Sensei, they're old buddies. So you know, they sit down, and you know, it's still COVID, so everybody's like masked up and stuff. And he opens the conversation by asking him about the war in Ukraine, and what does he think about the military technology and the drones and this and that. Oshii starts talking and like about military technology, you know, being used, you know, in that war and by Russia and in different places around the world. And like 30 minutes later, we're like, okay, maybe so I'm Jordan. Nice to meet you. Like, but that's the kind of guy he is. I mean, he just, you know, will absolutely dive deep on something and take it and run with it forever. And that's, you know, that's what we were excited to have him do in the course itself.
Hey, so I apologize, but I think I'm probably going to have to drop out after this question, like we had talked about. So you know, apologies for that. But I just wanted to maybe comment a little bit on what Jordan was saying. I personally am incredibly intimidated when we're working with like people who themselves create film and the rest. They're so good at what they do, and you're like, oh, what are they going to think of our camera choices? Like, what are they going to think of our script, etc. And despite my anxiety about it, I think they've both been actually incredibly gracious. And when they've had a suggestion, of course, inevitably, you're like, oh, why didn't like we think of doing it that way? But the challenge of always working with people who also are familiar with the medium is they know exactly, they can see what we're doing with such clarity is the thing about it. And it's intimidating to work like where you're like, oh, this is someone who's created work that we have such profound respect for, and it's so legendary. And you're like, and I'm like, and then it's me like working on a script, or it's Jordan working on a script. So that's an interesting but kind of terrifying part of the experience. And what I would say though then is they've both been like so incredible and like creative and productive to it. Like I see like they're like they scoop up and are able to use or help, I don't know, gently sort of like redirect some of the things that we're doing in ways that are just make it better, and that's hugely appreciative. So
But thank you very much, Todd, for joining us.
No, and thanks for taking the time with us as well. It's hugely appreciated. So apologies for having to drop
No,
off. Okay.
it's completely fine. Thank you,
Yeah.
though.
I'll start by saying the views expressed in this interview do not necessarily reflect the views of Todd Silverstein or even Naro as a whole. I will be speaking as an individual today with some weird ideas and weird opinions.
No, but I thank you guys so far for really letting me sit down and, pick your brains about this, because like I said, this whole interview, like I said earlier, my staff, like, they were like, this seems cool, but does it fit what we do? We do tokusatsu and anime. And I go, don't worry, there's anime there, there's tokusatsu there. It may take me a little while to get to it, but we're getting there. And I really like hearing about that, because to build off with the Mamoru Oshii stuff, is we kind of assumed, because I know production IG and a lot of the old school, like even the Sunrise people, if you're in production IG, if you're old school Sunrise, you usually are untouchable. They don't usually want to do interviews these days. They're very, very reserved old school style of, we make the anime, we go home to our family, and we could care less about the rest of the world. And that's pretty cool that they're that, unplugged. And to just know that, like, the course with him is gonna finally be like kind of a real look, not just into who he is, but how he does things, or how production IG does things, and so on and so forth, is really great to hear. And I think that's a great way to market, obviously, this upcoming course. But I want to build off of that, since you guys already did talk a bit about Yagi. What is at least something you guys can say to our audience that they should expect from this course, outside of like seeing the Akari production? Like, what's something you could say? Because you said amazingly, like you said, Oishi is giving you his time, and he doesn't really do that.
Yeah, with Yagi Sensei, there's a couple things. So one that I would say is Yagi Sensei has been interviewed a number of times in different outlets. And you guys, your interview, despite that weird hiccup with Google Translate doing whatever Google Translate tried to do, God bless Google, they try. But other than that, like, the translation in your article was really solid, and or in your interview, with him, and I loved it. The questions were awesome, but I think in other venues it's hit and miss. Sometimes there's been really good translation. Other times I think they might have volunteer translators or be relying on a little bit of machine translation. And I felt like it's been like something has been dropped, and like his what he's really trying to say is not coming through very well. And so one of the things that I'm super excited about sharing with the world is, like, we run everything in Japanese with him. So my interview sessions and talk sessions with him are all in Japanese, and he feels super comfortable just saying what he has to say. And so I think it's a time where, by knowing that he's going to be speaking through this course to people all around the world, he's speaking in a way that's not just for like hardcore Japanese tokusatsu fans, but for tokusatsu fans and people who might even be new to it. It's a kind of a blend. But he's speaking comfortably in Japanese, knowing that we're going to take a long time and put a lot of care into translating it. So that's one thing. The other thing is, in terms of the actual content of it, first of all, to be totally honest, I don't even know how we're going to process all the content. I mean, like, we had about 3 or 4 meetings with him, writing sessions, and had like a script kind of all planned out. And then Todd was like, I think it would be way more interesting, rather than telling us about all these steps and making a tokusatsu and talking about tokusatsu history and talking about it from a cultural studies perspective, it'd be way more interesting if you just made one, and so then he comes up with that idea, right? And then all of the steps, from working with Matt Frank on the design of Akari, the heroine, to working with Iguchi Akihiko on the monster design, to working with Marbling Fine Arts to actually construct these things. And we weren't doing the construction. We were almost like art directing, right? Yagi Sensei is getting in there saying, what about this? What about that? And Matt and Iguchi-san are kind of giving feedback. And, we see early drafts of the sculptures and the figures and stuff. And they're giving feedback, and they're going back and changing the sculptures, and then molding samples, and then coming out with the final one, and then putting the color on it and piecing it all together. making sure that it moves and that the actors can actually fight inside the suits and stuff. So we have footage of all this stuff. I mean, it's dozens of hours of footage, and some of it's on proper cameras, some's on iPhones, like, and we have Yagi Sensei like narrating that. So it's super in depth. But the thing about Yagi Sensei is that, you know, he's also authored a couple books, and he's got another one, I think his third, that's coming out later this year, 2023. And
I think it's his fifth, actually.
oh, is it? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because he
Then
did Tiga, Dyna, Gaia, Max, and he's working on 7X right now.
oh yeah, so this is a book of interviews that he did with like kind of legends in Tokusatsu, and and it just came out, so maybe it's even more than that. Yeah, I was thinking of more like books that are like his own kind of cultural studies, historical take on Tokusatsu as a field. Um, uh, and so this is like, you know, he's an intellect, he's a scholar, he's a historian, and he's also someone who came into Tsuburaya as what you might call a second generation, you know, Tsuburaya insider. So he didn't work with Tsuburaya Eiji, who had passed away, I think just a few years before he joined Tsuburaya as a young graduate from Waseda. And what he does is he narrates what it's like to work with the Tsuburaya family minus Tsuburaya Eiji, but to kind of feel his legacy in so many of his companions of that generation, and to work with Tsuburaya's son, to understand what Tsuburaya Eiji's relationship to his grandson meant, and how that particular family dynamic of grandfather to grandson, right? Tsuburaya is like he's a creator who's working in this field and kind of pioneering as he goes, right? So um, Yagi Sensei talks a lot about the film history that led Tsuburaya Eiji to kind of become this innovator in that field and really pioneer the genre, and then take it to the next level with Ultraman, but also how Ultraman kind of changed as Tsuburaya Eiji related to his grandson, and realized that, or not just Ultraman, but Tokusatsu as a whole, how that changed in relation to his grandson, because, you know, he's not just like creating stuff for this abstract concept of little kids. He's actually got this grandson who he wants to delight and see laugh, and also instill with certain values and stuff. So it takes on a new light. So what you have is a really interesting historical take that I've never seen Yagi deliver anywhere else, where he gives the whole kind of background of Tokusatsu in Japan, and specifically Tsuburaya Eiji's role in it. And then Yagi kind of stops that history, and then Yagi jumps into it and starts, narrating what it was like from his perspective as a young raw recruit, inside of Tsuburaya, and some of his first jobs. He went to Shanghai. He worked on all kinds of animation and other projects. And so that blending of the historical and the personal is also super fascinating.
Yeah, no, as a huge kind of Tokusatsu historian myself, I've done a lot of research, at least on the Ultraman side. Ultraman side has always been very accessible due to obviously authors and stuff in North America, like August Ragon, David Klatt, who did Godzilla books and whatnot. There's always been a couple of people who, have at least been able to translate and bring that over here to North America. And having, talked with Yagi-san a little bit, like, I know how he was some of his first credits for Tsuburaya were like the early 90s, late 80s, after he had possibly joined, because Eiji died. I was double checking when I was looking at the computer here. I was actually double checking because Eiji, I remember, dying somewhere in the 70s, which was 1970 to be exact. And then Yagi-san came in probably mid 80s or something like that. And then finally his first credits were in the 90s. And just knowing how Tsuburaya went from Tsuburaya to Tsuburaya's son, and then his nephew or grandson was in Toei as Shider, became a Tokusatsu hero in Toei, then comes back and in a lot of the episodes portrays either his grandfather himself or his actual biological father in episodes where they blend real world shenanigans with the fictional world. and also been a star as a, you know, reoccurring character as a military officer in Tiga, as well as a reporter in Gaia. Like his grandson got to do a lot, and it's a shame he also had passed away too, because that man in his own right was also a not just a hero on screen, but you know, he's a part of a legacy, and so was Eiji's legacy with that. So to, you know, you getting to interact with Yagi and bring more about what it's like to be thrown in there with the legends that at least built Subaraya with Subaraya, and then come to now where he's kind of passing the torch and whatnot, is really great. Because when I'm really glad that you appreciated our translations with the subtitles. My team was very obsessing, hoping that he loved our subtitles, or not our subtitles, but our translations, I should say, because they were really afraid, because they were like, well, I'm only this level in Japanese. I hope he likes them, and yada yada yada. They were very worried, but having talked with him, he did talk a lot about his books. He did talk about that, and I said to Yagi-san, I go, the only unfortunate thing is a lot of these books aren't available in North America. So you say refer to the books, so your Japanese audience obviously can, but for us, I said you should ask Subaraya if they can find a publisher or something to distribute them in the West, because we're as the international fans are missing that link, and right now you're providing sort of that link that we couldn't really provide in the interviews at this time. But Yagi did say we could ask him more questions sometime in the future. So I don't know when I'll be like, hey, Yagi-san, can we ask more Tokusatsu questions since your books are still not available? Or can we ask you more questions on working with Narō? Because he didn't tell us all about Narō when we got to work with him. He just gave us like the little bit of like sprinkling stuff, because at the time we were producing it, it was right before the Tokyo Comic Con. And by the time we were done translating, it was just like the day after. And we were like, all right, we're just publishing it in December, and we're taking, you know, the rest of the month off, kind of. But
Yeah, I
that was,
imagine that book will get translated at some point, and it's something that we might even take on, like just as kind of a fun project, like pick a chapter or two, an interview or two, and then release it as a PDF on our website for people who, you know, who enroll in the class to enjoy particularly. And we leave it up to Yagi Sensei to kind of curate which one that would be. But it's definitely on the agenda. I wish the book were available in English as well. And some of the stuff, you know, in there, I mean, I think the second interview book that's actually coming out later this year, he interviews some of the people that we worked with on this project. And I think he actually talks about Narō in that book as well. But one of the things that I want to find a way to share in this course is also what it was like to create the Akari. We started by calling it a mini tokusatsu. But what it was like to create Akari with this team of legends, because you've got, like, you know, the stunt director was you know, when it was the original Power Rangers, and was a stunt man and stunt coordinator and stuff like Last Samurai and Beverly Hills Ninja and stuff like that. You've got Muraishi-san, who, you know, who did what do they call it, action effects, you know, soeng as they call it in Japanese, you know, for a bunch of legendary properties, and people who worked on Kamen Rider, and, you know, I mean, it's just and then of course Iguchi, who designed the you know, the monster, the kaiju. I mean, he's legendary. I mean, he did the original Mecha Godzilla. You know all about Iguchi. I don't have
oh
to,
yeah,
you know, tell your fans
exactly.
about him. I
But my
mean, they,
fans,
you know,
I even wrote it in the article. I promoted who was who. I took the basis from your site. I cross-referenced to see what you guys left out. I added to our article off of what you guys have for your little synopsis or bases. I made sure. So if people don't realize, yeah, the original suit designer for Mecha Godzilla and King Caesar and Titanosaurus.
yep.
And those are two of my favorite movies from the late Showa era. Like after Destroy All Monsters, I default right to the Mecha Godzilla movies, because like Destroy All Monsters is like my end all be all of the late Showa period. Like past
Yeah, for
60s.
sure. Yeah, yeah. No, Mecha Godzilla is, you know, it's a turning point in a lot of ways. And Iguchi is, I just want to say this one thing about him, and he's a really, really interesting dude. Super like cool and fashionable, and like, you know, just he retains that. He retains the air of an artist, and he's also getting older. I think he turned to 80 over the period of time we were working together, and But one of the things that he said, I'll never forget, when Matt Frank originally presented the designs for the heroine, they were the body of the suit was like blue and purple and different colors, and there were a bunch of, you know, multicolor things because it was supposed to be based on an alien technology, and it was derived from like an extraterrestrial mythology, right? So Iguchi looked at that suit and was like, I still remember, he's like, "Sore wa seigi no iro janai," right? That's not the color of justice. And we were like, "What?" And he's like, "White is the color of justice. Like this, the suit base should be white." And then we were all like, you know, we presented that idea to Matt, and Matt like tried some white designs, and we were like, that really fits. She really like, she has
Oh
a
man.
bunch of different colors, but there's this base on her that's, it ended up being a kind of like a grayish white in the final suit. But you know, just the way that he thinks about things from an artistic perspective, and the way that they're also, you know, his designs are supposed to emanate values and feelings and worldviews and philosophies. And a lot of people look at it and like, ah, it looks like Godzilla. But you know, there's much more to it, as a fan like you would appreciate.
All I know is now I want to go message Matt later and be like, "Hey Matt, white's the color of justice," to see if he knows what I'm talking about. Because I don't think he talked about it at all. I don't think he's mentioned
Yeah.
that on social media. I don't know if he mentioned it at the Tokyo Comic Con, but I really want to now just be like, "So Matt, the color," because I'm also associates and friends with Matt Frank. He's practically like everyone's friend. He like knows like everyone essentially. I think he's the Kevin Bacon right now in the Tokusatsu community. Like
That's the
everyone knows
impression
Matt.
I get. He's a wonderful dude. We got to meet him in Tokyo when he was out there for Comic Con, and we had an amazing time with him. Our relationship with Matt Frank is not done. It is just starting. And that's also why we really want to take Akari, which was created as a kind of concept short film for the purpose of teaching Tokusatsu film production. We want to take it and run with it. So we're talking with Matt about tons of different ideas, and Matt didn't originally join the project as a writer. He joined it as an artist and a character designer. But you know, his depth of knowledge and just his passion for like for tokusatsu and for storytelling, and you know, as a comic artist, as a mangaka himself, you know, he's got a great narrative sense. So he's actually been kind of spitballing with us and thinking of different ways that we can continue to develop that storyline.
All right. So I guess since we keep talking about Akari, what is it like to actually help to create? Like you said, originally it was to talk about Tokusatsu, and then you're like, let's make a Tokusatsu. So what is it like overall, you know, making this hero, making this production? And what is your intent to continue it? Do you want it to be a movie? Do you want it to be a series? What, where do you want to go with this project?
First of all, what it was like, it was incredible. And this is, I really hope we can capture this. You know, I really hope it comes through in what we've shown, because watching conversations and ideas and concepts take life in the drawn form, in the art of Matt and Iguchi Sensei, was super cool. But then to go to marbling and see this thing emerge, you know, and see it emerge as a small sculpture, and then as something full bodied, but kind of rough and uncolored. And then I personally didn't get to see the final colored version of the monster and the heroine until we were on set. And it was just, I mean, we were all moved. We kept just staring at it and staring at it. And we just kept taking pictures in between cuts. We just constantly were taking pictures of the suits, and they looked so awesome. And it was so interesting because there are a lot of things were planned and on purpose. And as Todd said, our cinematographer, Alex, was incredible. The lighting team was incredible. We worked with the artist Mad Dog Jones on a kind of color vision for it. And that's why we chose the really unique colors that we did. Mad Dog's an amazing artist. I worked with him a few years ago, and then he kind of became the inspiration for the color look of this. And also that the kind of the way that you can transform a city like Tokyo into this space that feels both cyberpunk and kind of otherworldly, or MC Escher-ish or Escher-esque at the same time. So that was really all magic to see happen, but there were a lot of accidents, like really cool accidents that happened. And even like seeing the way that they roll with mishaps, like the monster sometimes whacked Akari in the head and smashed her mask in the middle of shooting. So that happened once, and we were able to like quickly go and like manufacture, you know, marbling, like stayed up late overnight and manufactured another mask for the next day of shooting. But then it happened again the last day, and it's like, there's no time to make another mask. What are we going to do? So we had to like do all these, you know, these different things to kind of roll with it. But what Yagi was kind of clear about in teaching us about his process is that that's what Tokusatsu is. It's you can never plan for everything. There's always mishaps. You always run out of budget. Something, you know, something always goes wrong. Your explosion, something happens wrong with your explosion, and you have to make the best of it. And so it was very, very cool to kind of see that attitude, like the best of planning combined with the best of spontaneity.
The one thing I think our interview learned from Yagi-san was not about the spontaneousness, but was the idea of crafting a challenge to overcome is sort of what old school Tokusatsu was. It's like, what can't we do, but do it anyways kind of ordeals. Like, what crazy ass stunt can we somehow make reality is kind of like how I at least absorbed a lot of the knowledge he was, you know, telling us, because translating it, it was like a 4-step process where my translators would translate it, they'd check their books, they'd even run it through Google Translate to compare back and forth to see how close they were, and then I, as the editor, went in and then cleaned up as best I could to make sure we got it right. So that's how I interpreted what they interpreted from his. So it was a mess, and I'm still shocked that you're like, no, those were perfect. And I'm like, wow, I did not know like four people and a Google Translate and a book were able to get like really good translations. I keep saying subtitles, I think, but the translations. But we understood that Yagi's mentality was create a challenge, overcome it, then do that overcoming tomorrow, but with a newer challenge added on. Like, it was like, let's go from here to here, but then make tomorrow worse and try to do that again. Like, it's always a thing, because he says like the process of Tokusatsu is like, once you get it done right and you can do it perfectly, it's not a challenge anymore, and other studios will eventually figure out how to double it, or, you know, implement it or duplicate it, and that's how Tokusatsu kind of innovates on itself. It's like, for every time Tsuburaya does something, Toei's probably gonna figure it out. Or if every time Toei does it, Tsuburaya, it's like kind of like who can up the ante on, I guess, the insanity.
Yeah, exactly. And on this one, I mean, we knew we didn't have like a, you know, we put a ton of budget into this by Naro standards, but you know, like if it were a feature film, there's obviously like more that you can do. So we tried to be innovative in other ways, like having a female heroine as the main protagonist, you know, fighting the kaiju was, you know, was kind of part of it. Having a monster that could be both cute and ferocious was another, and then working with the kind of you know, artistic vision of Mad Dog Jones. We tried to bring in innovation, you know, in a few forms that Yagi at least had never experimented with, or never brought out fully in his work. So yeah, we added a little bit here and there, and a lot of it was planned. And there's one shot that you might see where Akari kind of like squares off, and like and she's got her mask on, and she kind of goes like down like this and looks up, and the light goes like zoom, zoom, like over her helmet. And that was like a happy accident. We didn't, and it's not special effects, we didn't CG any of that. That was just like a cool reflection that happened to like hit her mask just because the way the lights were. So we discovered some things in the studio that were not totally planned for, and we, you know, we also made the best of them, and they became, you know, I think some of the like coolest wow moments in the film. And I should also probably wrap up within maybe a question or two. I'm at
All right,
a
yeah, we can do that. Don't worry.
cool. But I love the
I guess,
questions, and I would love to I'd love to
yeah.
continue.
So you do plan for this to be a movie or a series, or is this one and done for the already?
No, we certainly hope not. I mean, it's I think it's like anything in the entertainment world. We consider this a kind of a taste of what we want to do. We'd like to put together a fuller pilot to make it into a series, or at least do a feature film based on it. That's a very large project, and no one, not even, you know, Yagi, can wave a wand and just make that happen. But we are all very, very fired up about it, and we are all continuing to push on it. So first things first, we want to get the class born and get that out to people, and then hopefully what we've been told and what we also believe ourselves is that if a lot of people participate in the class and are excited about it, share about it, et cetera, all those things, then we will likely be able to get the opportunity to continue it into a full-on series or a feature. That seems to be the best route forward. But either way, we're planning to continue creating and developing the story. We have a full scenario done right now, but we expect it to evolve as we go. And I think some of the conversations with Matt Frank will also help in pushing that, deeper and even into more interesting, unexpected, and innovative directions.
All right. So like you said, you want to get done with one more question. There were actually 3 left, but I guess I can just always have you guys, like you said, write in or whatever and submit.
Well, let's go through them.
Feel
Let's see what
free
we can do.
Okay. Okay. So what are other culture courses previously not mentioned or teased on your website that you would like to present in the future? Like, is there a way we can get like a scoop or at least some kind of inkling on what's to come?
Yeah, for sure. I can't talk names about some of these,
Yeah,
some of the people.
But what courses at least?
Yeah. We are talking with other people in anime and character design, some real legends in that field. We are talking to other people in film production and some of the producers of like the absolute biggest world hits of the last like 10, 15 years in like specifically with like OVA, like, feature film style animes, but other feature films too. We're talking with a bonsai expert who has trees, that he inherited that are like 600 years old, and some of these things sell for like upward of $1 million. But just amazing bonsai trees. We're talking with ikebana flower arranging experts. We are talking with calligraphers, ceramics artists. We have one of the biggest art curators in Japan, who's a kind of a person who basically made the careers or really helped the careers of some of the giants in Japanese art today. We've got conversations going with writers, novelists, poets. We are hoping to initiate a conversation with one of the gods of drift, like driving, racing. And let's see what else. Sword makers, tea, people who cultivate and make tea. Other people in sort of beauty and fashion, including some Harajuku fashion icons, like people who made that scene. We've got people in music. We've got actually a guy who produces both J-pop and K-pop, and we're hoping to do like a music production course with him. Might be next year, but maybe like late this year. And yeah, a few others, but I think most of the other ones are out on our website, as like listed as coming soon. And then of course, we're always open to new things. Like we've had people, write to us via social media and be like, how about this person? And we're always like, sounds good. Do you want to introduce us, or should we just cold call them? And of course we have the people that we dream of reaching out to, but haven't gotten around to it yet.
All right. The next question I have would be, among the masters you've not collaborated yet, who do you specifically want to feature or would like to work with on Naro? Is there like one in particular, or maybe 2 you would want to do?
Yeah, there are a few. I mean, I'd really love to work with Hosoda Mamoru, the anime director. I think he's an incredible storyteller. I would say Miyazaki Hayao, but he's actually got a really extensive thing that he did with NHK, which is like, it's already pretty thorough. So I think he's kind of told most of his story already. I'd love to work with some of the great storytellers. Unfortunately, Murakami Haruki said as a general rule he doesn't do anything involving the internet, so we couldn't work with him. He's a popular novelist that I read a lot in my 20s and thought that would be fun, but unfortunately didn't work. I'd love to do one on architecture with Kuma Kengo. Yeah, that would probably be my hit list. And then actually Murata-san of the restaurant Kikunoi, it's like a 3 Michelin star restaurant. He's the head of the, I think it's called the Japan Culinary Institute, something like that. An incredible chef. I think that would be super fun. And then I don't know, people like Naomi Osaka, who have done well in their sports, but also have like spoken out in ways that have changed Japan, not just their sport, but like changed the country completely, even changed the world, right? I think that'd be super fun. It's a very long list, you know, and we want to circle back and some of the people that we met while doing sumo, like Musashi Maru, the guy who he's a yokozuna and a good friend of Konishiki, and we got to meet him at he let us use his sumo beya to shoot in, and then I'd love to do a class with him as well. But yeah, the list is endless. You get me talking on this, and it's literally now dozens and dozens of people that I'd love to work with. Who do you think I should work with? Who would you like us
Well,
to reach out to? Who's your top? You know,
some of my top people I would possibly like to see since you already work with like Sayagi-san for Ultraman. I would only want to like one would be for at least Toei Tokusatsu. I would like to see maybe like stunt acting as a whole, maybe like Seiji Takaiwa. I know he recently like retired as the main suit actor for Kamen Rider. He's done several suit acting with Toei for several years. Like anyone like possibly Takaiwa-san, who like I said is Mr. Kamen Rider, or like Jiro Okamoto. I think his name is Okamoto. He was also a prolific suit actor dating back from like the 80s. He played Kamen Rider Black, Black RX, and he's still suit acting as of today. Like those guys, I think would help on the Toei side since they are the Kamen Rider, the Super Sentai. As for other stuff in Japanese culture, I know pro wrestling is big internationally, but there is the pro wrestling, the strong style. There are people that work, who have obviously associated themselves with like Antonio Inoki, the Great Baba, stuff like that. There are wrestlers today who are their students, their proteges. Like Great Muta is retiring. There's Jushin Thunder Liger, like people who work in like Noah or people who are associated with New Japan. So I'm one of those guys. Unfortunately, like otaku. I'm a pro wrestling guy. I'm an anime and a tokusatsu guy. Anime wise, I would say Tomino, but I feel like Tomino is just like untouchable. Yoshiyuki Tomino, because he's one of the guys who helped innovate Mecha as well as Go Nagai. Unfortunately, Leiji passed away, I believe, last year or the year before that. It's been such a blur. Who did I think Captain Harlock. So a lot of the great anime people are slowly, unfortunately, are no longer with us or their time is coming, sadly. So it's really hard to say who's who and who will allow you in. But those are some names that I could just like pop off the back. I mean, probably modern classics or modern, like, guys who, innovated anime or whatever probably would be like some of the shonen guys, like Kuramada with Saint Seiya, or, uh, Toriyama with Dragon Ball. But like there's other people. There's bound to be other people more qualified than them. But like those are the quick names I can immediately come with that, like, my audience probably will immediately go, I know him, I know him. But there are so many other great animators. There's so many great other people that, like you say, they worked on OVAs, and OVAs are incredible because it was they were either loosely crowdfunded or the directors and animators themselves put their own money up on the line. And there was one guy who came to mind recently, and I can't think of his name. And my friends always associate that I'm so much like this one guy. He did work with, I think, Mamoru Oshii once, but I forget what title they worked on together. And I think he also worked with Masami Obari, who's another known mecha engineer and designer. I can't think of his name right now, and the name's escaping me, and I'll probably have to DM it to you later who I was referring to. But there's so many, and depending on who you talk to who are Japanese culture enthusiasts, it'll always be different, like I said, because my thoughts are like, oh, you did Ultraman, you should try Toei people next, or whatnot. I just thought of I just thought of a Godzilla one directly associated with Godzilla. A lot of their directors I know are no longer around from the Showa era or even the Heisei. There was the recent passing that happened within like the last 5 years where he tragically just had, I think, cancer or something or whatnot, and he did all like most like I think Ghidorah to Destroyer. But you could also maybe talk to Satsuma himself, who was Godzilla from '84 to Destroya. There's so much you can do, because I think since you've done directing, you need to get the suit actors, because you even made the joke, I think you and Todd said, about the suits are so heavy, they're so sweaty, they're hard to lug around. They're probably like 80 to over 100 and something pounds. I know they've changed throughout the years, so those would be my takes. And our final question is, where do you see Naro as a platform and a service within the next 5 to 10 years? Like, what are your goals, or what are your hopes for with this service, to finally wrap up the interview?
Well, I mean, ideally, in your list of people in across several industries, right, already shows that there is so much potential and so much interest globally. Um, what I'd like to do is, and what we're planning to do is, over the next 4 years, produce about a total of 200 of these, to really get a huge base of content, so that if people want to, for example, subscribe on an annual basis, almost like masterclass, they've got like annual subscriptions, and then that for me, that puts us in a kind of stable position where, like, I am vice president of content and storytelling, but I work with Todd to kind of plan the whole production process, and work with our production partners and colleagues in those fields, writers and directors and cinematographers and editors and stuff, to make that happen. It would get us into a situation where we can start planning years in advance, and I can kind of get the mechanism rolling, and then very efficiently greenlight teams to move ahead with all of those. Because right now it's one team, it's one group of people making all of these, and we've already produced like 5 of them in the first not even year of existence, and we're about to drop another 3 or 4 coming up this spring. It's a lot of work, and so I'd love to grow the team, so that when people toss out 10 or 15 or 20 ideas, we can say yes, and then pursue all of them, because we're interested. And so far we haven't had a dud. We haven't had an experience where we got in there and thought like, oh god, why did we make this course? This is not interesting. Everyone, we just want to go deeper and spend more time on it. So yeah, a couple hundred courses 4 years down the road would be amazing.
All right, so the goal is become like an actual real, like, kind of streaming service, subscription service, so people can just
Yeah.
tune in whenever they want. They'll have more accessibility, because I know for some people I've talked to, when I've introduced the course to them or told them about it, they looked at it, they saw the price, and they're like, $40? I'm like, well, this is a startup company, that this is a like a master class kind of thing, so they're giving you the option of just getting the course you want, rather than having to pay to see every course at the moment, which I assumed that was like the intention, was that eventually you'll build, so if I want to just check out the other people, if I want to, like, say, watch sumo or watch ramen, I can easily just watch it if there's.
Yeah, and the food pack is like a way of kind of saying, oh, well, if you like cooking here, you can take all the food classes for, for a huge like discount. The thing that we do that's different from a lot of sites is, like, we're also scheduling our first live Q&A with Nitome, the tempura chef, in February. And so I think a lot of people would not hesitate to spend some money to attend like a lecture or a short or a small Q&A with some of these people. They might hesitate to pay that, to watch the videos, but these are really well done. You also get, books, recipe books, PDF guides, stuff like that. And you can attend Q&As that are live, interpreted from Japanese to English by myself and other like people on our team. I mean, when do you get the chance to do that? When do you get the chance to sit down with a Michelin star chef or with a great creator like Yagi and have a small group of people asking questions over a Zoom or something like that? I know for me, I love stuff like that, and I've never had the chance. I mean, now I'm doing this job, so I got to sit down with Oshimamoru and spend hours talking with him. But before that, if someone said like, hey, it's $40 and you can like ask him some live questions and participate in this discussion that's going to be interpreted, I would totally do that. So I think it just depends on how you look at it. And there's always somebody who, like, on our Facebook or something, when we have the ramen class, they'll be like, haha, step 1, open lid, pour in water over instant noodles, and it's like, okay. Or or they'll be like, I found this free YouTube video that like shows how to make ramen in 8 minutes, and then I'll watch it, and it's like the audio is so bad I can barely hear what they're saying. The subtitles are weird or wrong, and it doesn't actually show you how to make ramen. It shows you how to like put soup and noodles and how to slice chashu and put it on top. It's not a ramen cooking class, but I don't think people quite know how much you get when you purchase one of these. Like it's a deep and intimate experience that we put a lot of time into, and it's not cheap. I mean, we have all of our friends working on this, round the clock, people who love what they do, people who love Japan, people who love the creators we're working with, people who love the fields that we're making content about, and everybody's giving it their best, and you'll, when you see it, you'll notice the quality, and we do have to sell it, because like how else are we going to be able to do this? And so far it's much more of a labor of love than, we are not the evil capitalists sitting back smoking cigars on the massive profits from these classes. We are doing this because we love what we do, and we hope that those the world will essentially make this economically viable, and that's all we really want to do. Like I would really just love for this job to continue for another 5-10 years, and to keep on bringing this amazing content, with the cool creative team that we've put together, and these great masters from Japan.
No, thank you very much for all that information, because like you guys are already making big by talking to these legends. Me, I'm really hustling right now to just get ends meet to get through these steps of negotiations, because I bet you guys do it every time. You'll ask a guy and they go, yeah, 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 here's my contact information, go here. And then you either don't get the response from their manager or their agency. And because, but you guys are at least bigger, so you at least probably get a response. Sometimes I don't even get anything. I just get message read.
Yeah,
So yo, you guys are
it
living the dream
helps.
right now.
Yeah, it helps to be on the ground in Tokyo, and to, definitely. And Mariko, who I wish, she's actually on her way to CES right now. I would have loved to have her participate in the interview. Because she also helped out in the writing and the production of the Oshi class. But yeah, no, that having a team that knows a lot of people in Japan is also super helpful too, because a lot of it's about people saying, okay, well, I'm really busy, but if it's a favor for my friend, I guess I can do it. And then once the door is open, they're, you know, I think they're happy that they opened the door.
Yeah, because the ball really started rolling like every time anyone is willing to give me the opportunity, and then they
Mm.
try to tell their friends, and then their friends try to figure it out. I just know that like Sean Nichols, I know he's associates with you guys now. He has tried, and Yagi has tried to like help me kind of get over some of the hurdles that the agencies in Japan, like they don't, a lot of the agencies in Japan don't understand that the international market is there. We are here. We want to learn, whether it's tokusatsu, whether it is anime. We legitimately want to learn, and as press, just for press, not even just a guy who's making, like you guys are making content on videos and courses about what they are, but we're just trying to find out what we can to provide a medium to a market that's untapped. And I think that's one thing they don't fully understand. I think they also don't understand that like uh the difference in journalism here versus over there, because I was once told that like if I was in the country of Japan, I would be charged X amount of money, but they can't expect to charge, so that's why they maybe don't take uh the deals either. So it's just incredible getting to hear your story on being able to be in Japan, being able to get these people to do stuff and negotiate and be able to sort of give their time to you to then share their story with us is great. I love hearing stuff like this, and being like kind of the middleman to the middleman at this point with this interview.
Well, I mean, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. And I should probably pack it up. I'm
right.
at a friend's place and they're crashing out. So it's a late night
That's
interview.
fine.
I know you're a
But
night
no,
owl
thank you
too.
very yeah,
Yeah.
so thank you very much for having me. For my audience, I'm Wheelchair 21. This was Jordan Smith, and you saw Todd earlier. And if you like what we do here at Hero Club, feel free to like, comment, subscribe on the channel. Check out our website, hero-club.com. All the information is in the description below. Follow us across social media using Hero Club for Life. Check out Naro TV. They have a Facebook. You guys, I think, have a Twitter and a LinkedIn, and you have the official site where you can go and
Instagram.
buy the courses, and
Yep.
Instagram. So if you want to learn more, go check them out, and we'll make sure you guys will have all the links in the description below so you can find them and follow them and just, learn like we are right now today. And I know there's probably some of you guys going, wow, half of this I didn't care about. And then there's probably a bunch of you guys, oh, well, it was interesting, so I stayed. So for those of you who actually stayed through the entire thing and didn't skim through, I'm proud of you all. And thank you for listening to Jordan and Todd.
Thanks so much.